Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Apex Racing TV's coverage of the iRacing Formula 3.5 Championship. We're at one of the most historic tracks in all of the world and one that Formula 1 is currently visiting as of tonight's broadcast. We're at Spa-Francorchamps here, covering the iRacing Formula 3.5 Championship. Certainly one of my favorite tracks and one of the favorite tracks of pretty much all sim racers across every gamut of motorsports. I'm Ron Mullins, all on your own in the commentary booth with Joshua Wilkie in the production hauler. And now I would go to a colleague of mine to get some thoughts from them, but I don't have a talking puppet alongside me, nor do I have an ability to play a talking puppet while I'm trying to do a broadcast. So I'll just give my thoughts briefly as we are following the number 4 driver here of Shirakawa going through the final series of corners before they go on to this long backstretch flat-out blast as they careen towards the bus stop chicane. So I got a chance to drive this combination quite extensively earlier, and I'll tell you, it was definitely a challenging one. And at a track like Spa, where we've seen many major accidents across all gambits of motorsports, and we've also seen a lot of drivers, pushing their cars to the absolute limit. At a track like this, there's not a lot of room for error, so I think we will see quite a few mistakes from some of these drivers, certainly not downplaying the skill level of these drivers racing in this series here on the top split here on the iRacing Formula 3.5 Championship. But I think at a track like this, where there's little margin for error, and if you make one small little mistake, you're pretty much destined to go into the barriers. We might see a bit of carnage tonight, but cross our fingers, hope for the best. Hopefully we can have a very clean and very exciting race. So we're currently in qualifying now. We are nearly 7 minutes in to the same 8-minute qualifying session, so drivers are on their final laps. We're following Richard Holt, who's currently in the 17th position right now, 1.9 seconds behind your pole sitter right now, Mallow, who set a 1 minute 59.4. Wow, that's faster than some qualifying times that we've seen in Formula 1 this weekend, albeit they've been running in the wet. But still, very close field right now between Mallow currently in first and your last place qualifier right now of Bryn. It's only 2.5 seconds between these drivers, so I think it'll produce some very interesting racing tonight. We'll just have to wait and see how things play out this evening. So one thing that we might see a bit of too is a bit of slipstreaming. Of course, at a track like this with very long flat-out blasts, we'll definitely see some drivers trying to break the slipstream, just weaving all over the place, especially going down here, going down Kemmel straightaway as they exit the Eau Rouge and Radion section and go into the chicane to end the straightaway, one of the heaviest braking zones, and this is certainly going to be one of the biggest overtaking opportunities on this whole circuit tonight. So qualifying has wrapped up here. It is a very full grid. We had 60 entries for tonight's race, so fantastic stuff to see such a big turnout. But right now it is Alfredo Mallow in pole position for tonight's race at a 1:59.4, and then we have the American. Glad to see some American representation. Edward Samborski currently in second. Jorge Lopez in third. Phil Reed in fourth. We have Yuki Shirakawa in fifth, who we were following a little while ago. We have Gerbau in sixth. We have James Byrne in seventh. Jamie Byrne, we've got twins here racing tonight, and they lock out your fourth row. And then looking through the rest of the field, we have Jay Lawrence in ninth. We have Yunus Amal in 10th. Excuse me, I nearly said 11th. They're in 11th position. We have Kingsip, and then in 12th position we have Bugdaci in the 12th position, and then we have Fessy in 13th. We have Musadola in 14th. We have Lucas B in 15th. Shindoi in 16th position, and then we have the Brazilian driver of Valio Tavares in the 17th position, then John Owens in 18th, Richard Hull 19th, Tim Bryn in 20th, and then David Gallus rounding out your field in 21st position. So we've got a 21-car field here in top split. Very great to see some fantastic turnouts tonight here on Saturday night. A lot of drivers trying to get their sim racing fix, and they decide that the Formula 3.5 cars here on iRacing at one of the best tracks in all of sim racing, Spa-Francorchamps, would definitely scratch the itch that they have. So I think we're going to see a very exciting first lap. Certainly a track like this, we've seen a lot of carnage in real life, and we might see some here as they try and go into the into turn one. So we're going to get the 5 lights out. The lights are going to go out, and the drivers will be on their way. It's a fairly short run going into turn 1 here, but it looks like Mallow maintains the lead. Had a very good start there, some even keel starts throughout the field, and that's a driver spinning off there. Multiple drivers spinning off. We've got a pile up there exiting the corner. A lot of drivers involved there. That's Tavares, I see, dropping through the order. Lopez dropping through the order as well. Yeah, Tavares was definitely involved in that. Tough break for a lot of those drivers to get caught up in an incident so early on in this race, but it looks like we're going to have some action towards the front of the field right now. It's Samborski trying to go for the move around the outside of Mallow, going into the chicane at the end of the Kemmel straightaway, but it looks like he just will not he will not be able to get the move done there. That's a very tricky corner to get a move done, but we're seeing some drivers attempt the around the outside overtake. I know we've seen it across a whole bunch of racing series. We see some fantastic battling at this track, and especially through that chicane, because it leads to some very awesome racing, as you just saw. So a lot of drivers battling at this early stage of the race. We're only one lap into an 18-lap race, so longer than the F1 sprint race here that these drivers have to negotiate. So certainly a lot of time for these drivers to kind of get their bearings straight and just try and play it easy. But right now, a lot of drivers playing it very difficult. So these drivers got caught up in a big pileup. We're following Galus now, who had a pretty rough start, just very slow off the line, just drivers piling up all ahead of him. I saw one driver, I got a perfect view of his underside of the car, so a lot of drivers got caught up in that lap 1 schism there. Lap 1 turn 1 schism, for that matter, to be a bit more specific, but still, a lot of drivers not really biding their time. Certainly Phil Reed, that's actually Shirakawa, who's not really buying his time, trying to get past Reed for the final podium position. We're coming towards the end of lap 1 now, and already a lot of drivers starting to battle. This will be interesting to see if drivers try and even attempt a move, let alone look for a move going into the bus stop chicane, because we've seen a corner like that where you can definitely do a bit of argy-bargy, push a driver off, and make them deal with the sausage curbs on the inside. We'll see some interesting racing there. It'll be nice to see some attempts at an overtake there. It'll be nice to talk to a driver after this to ask them what were the real good overtaking opportunities in a race like this, where you have some very heavy braking zones and certainly a lot of overtaking opportunities. So right now we're following Shirakawa. It looked like he was nearly going to get past Reed after Reed locked up quite heavily going into turn 1, but thankfully for Reed, unfortunately for Shirakawa, they still stayed line of stern in 4th and 5th position at the moment. Sorry, my apologies. That's actually 3rd and 4th position right now, running 3rd and 4th in the number 3 and 4 cars. So a little OCD part of me really appreciates that. So some fairly clean racing, besides the incident that we saw there in turn 1 for a lot of those drivers getting caught up. Just simple spins for the most part. Fairly clean start so far, so hopefully we can keep that clean record and have these drivers see the checkered flag and just try and battle for everything they have. What's always great about sim racing is it's not like Formula 1 where drivers have to save up their stuff. It's like, oh yeah, don't attempt an overtake because we want to save energy or we want to save our equipment. Here in the sim racing world, you're not paying for any damage you inflict on your car. You're not putting yourself in physical harm if you go for a slightly audacious move at a certain part of this track. So these drivers always push their stuff to the absolute limits. They always give a lot of respect to their competitors for sure, but they're always trying to race them for every position they can. We're seeing some nice battling for position here. Right ahead of Kingstep, who we're following a few corners there. This is a battle side by side. Those drivers very close here. We're following Gerbau, who is currently running in the 6th position right now. He looked at a move on Burn. Those drivers were going side by side, and now Kingstep is going to get involved in this battle. This is going to be some nice stuff here. We saw some drivers battling even farther in the back, so we've got battles all throughout this field, even with the chaos, and even though we've just started the 3rd lap, we still have drivers very close, and right now we're seeing the battle for the 5th position heat up. This is Gerbau and Burn. These drivers are going side by side. They're going to go side by side into Rouge unless one of them backs out, and neither one of them does. That's some very close stuff there. And Gerbau manages to just lose that position. He looked like he was going to try and just stick it there, but he was unable to hold on to that position. He ended up losing another position. He might lose another position here right now as a Maul has gone involved in this battle. That was very close there with Burn and Kingstep has to go off, and there's Gerbau going off as well. Action all throughout the field. I didn't even notice the fact that Grabau had gone off at a corner like that, where just side-by-side racing with these cars, which are fairly big, all things considered by junior Formula standards. They're some of the biggest junior Formula cars in all of racing, certainly all of iRacing. And you just see in very tight sections like that, as they went through the chicane at the end of the Kemmel straightaway, those drivers trying to battle hard, and unfortunately it ended in disaster for a few of them. So that battle that was burning, that involved James Byrne, who's running in the 5th position, that has now fizzled out. So tough break for those drivers that got involved in an incident, but I'm sure James Byrne is very happy to still be running in P5, but it's not over yet. Kingsepp is still in 6th position. He's just certainly closer. Well, certainly Amal is closer to Kingsepp than he was before, but now Byrne has pulled away a little bit. Certainly this man Mallow has pulled away quite a lot. He had a fairly clean start there from pole position, and is still leading this race right now. Has a less than a 2-second gap to Samborski, who is behind him in 2nd. So that'll be nice to see if Samborski can close up that gap in the other final stages of this race and manage to put on a nice battle. That would be certainly very fun for me to call as the lone person here in the commentary booth. So right now, a lot of stuff going on. We believe Kingsepp had an incident. Yeah, he has dropped back quite a lot, so we're going to get a replay of an incident that he had going into the bus stop chicane. I gotta wonder what happened here. Very tricky corner here, just trying to go on the brakes as hard as you can. Yeah, just a lock up there, and he has to go to the runoff area. And at a track like this where the slowdowns are pretty harsh, we definitely see Kingsepp get bite in the rear end. So tough break for him as he now drops down to 10th. So very tough for him. In cars like these, certainly from my experience earlier today, it was very easy to snag a wheel trying to go very hard on the brakes, regardless of what corner you're going in. Whether you're going into turn 1, whether you're going into the chicane at the end of the Kemmel straightaway, or whether you're going into the bus stop chicane, it's very easy to lock up. I certainly had to have some adventures in the runoff areas of this track, so certainly a challenging combination for these drivers, but it's putting on some fantastic stuff here as we've had some great battling in the first 4 laps of this race. Taking a quick water break there. Remember, kids, it's always important to stay hydrated. So we've had some very intriguing racing so far. We're seeing drivers shuffle all throughout the field, even towards the back of the field, where the twin of Byrne and Galis, who was involved in that incident a couple laps ago, as he is pulled into the pits. Certainly he will probably be out of this race for good with the other damage he picked up. So we're seeing some shuffling all throughout this field, and just a lot of fantastic racing that we've seen so far. Right now we're entering a bit of a lull in the race as these drivers just try and tick down the laps. I mean, we're 10 minutes into this race, we're 5 laps in, and these drivers have put on some very hard racing, certainly trying to battle and claw for every position they can. And it's led to some very good stuff so far. So I'm certainly very, very satisfied with the racing that has been put on so far. And hopefully you're very satisfied watching at home. And if you are watching this, you are watching the SDK Gaming live HUD that I use to see the live timing here, and you see on your screen now. So SDK Gaming, it's more than just a live timing software. You get all kinds of overlays that you can use in iRacing, certainly a sim racer's choice. So if you're in the market to try and find some more overlays for iRacing, definitely check out SDK Gaming. All the relevant links are in the description. So we're seeing some more dicing up towards the front. This involves Amal, who has actually gone past James Byrne, who we saw running in the 5th position throughout a lot of that. So Amal, who was running 7th a few laps ago, has now managed to take the 5th position from Byrne. So it looked like a very formulaic move there, for lack of a better term. Going down the Kemmel straightaway, we're going to get a replay here. Thank you very much, Joshua, for this very quick replay. We're going to be riding on board with Amal. He's just tucked in the slipstream there of Byrne, and he manages to pull out and manages to pull off the overtake as they went on the brakes. Going down the Kemmel straightaway, they're still side by side, and just Amal managed to pull ahead even before they went into the Lacombe chicane. So certainly a very formulaic move there from Amal. Certainly not a bad move, though. It's just nice to have some very textbook overtakes there, and certainly that's the way to describe the move that Amal just pulled off there on Byrne. So One thing I would like to mention that I mentioned in the Radical Racing broadcast yesterday is it's always good to see a lot of international representation here in this series. We have 2 Japanese drivers. We have a Mal who's representing Morocco. We have drivers all around the world. You know, we have Tavares, who unfortunately was involved in that mistake, the incident towards the start of the race, and we also have Musadola currently running in the 7th position. He's had a quiet race so far. He's currently running in the 7th position, representing Brazil. So we have a lot of great representation in this field. Our leader is currently from the Iberian Peninsula. Our 2nd place runner is currently from America, and Reed, currently running in 3rd, is from the United Kingdom and Ireland. So it's nice to see some international representation. We're certainly seeing some great representation and certainly some great turnout tonight. So it's always great to have a great community of racers that are just dedicated and really passionate in the racing they put on track, and it's certainly great to cover it here on Apex Racing TV. There's certainly some great battling here. It's a few drivers running nose to tail. That's Jay Lawrence in the middle there from Australia. He is behind Musadola, who I mentioned earlier, representing Brazil, and right ahead of Bugdaci, who's running in the 9th position. These drivers have had a fairly quiet race, but right now they're involved in a bit of a peloton here of these 3 drivers just trying to get ahead of each other. So it'll be nice to see what kind of stuff will brew from this battle here. Certainly this might be the closest battle, I believe, on track at the moment, as a lot of the drivers have spread out throughout this field as they're trying to tick down the laps. We're only 6 laps into an 18-lap race, so we're only a third of the way into this race right now. So some great stuff so far, great racing from a lot of these drivers. Some incidents here and there, but not as much carnage as I was expecting, to be honest. I mean, we did have the incident a couple laps ago in the Lake Holmes chicane, and we certainly had the incident in Turn 1 La Source on lap 1, where it was really like 5 incidents manifesting into one. So certainly a clean start, and certainly a very exciting start of this race, and a lot of drivers are running very quick at this point. Certainly the man that is running the fastest right now is Mallow. He has pulled nearly a 4-second gap, and I think what we might do for this lap is right on board with Alfredo Mallow here and just try and just see how he puts this car around this track. Tracking 2-minute lap times, he has done some fantastic stuff so far. So I think I will shut my trap and just, I hope you enjoy the beautiful sound of the 3.5 engines. Certainly always great to listen to some engines, regardless of what open wheel series you're running in. Every open wheel series has their own tone, always very distinctive, and we're seeing a mistake from Mal there. I was going to blabber on about talking about beautiful engine notes, and there's contact there. Those drivers have a bit of argy-bargy stuff going on there. I think they might have picked up some damage. Certainly, you could see the damage on the front of Burns' car, I believe that is, and certainly a very tough break for him. It's going to be like he's dragging a parachute. Both of those drivers have damage. As you can see, the side pod damage inflicted onto Mal's car as he went around La Source. So this will be tough for those drivers that were running towards the front. They were running at the tail end of the top 5. Amal was running in 5th, Byrne was running in 6th, and Amal had that mistake there. Those drivers made contact. Very tough. We basically cut back at the perfect time there, but even though those drivers are damaged, they're still trying to battle for 5th position right now. Byrne is going to try and go around the outside, going into Lacombe chicane, and he manages to get the move done on Amal. Certainly, James Byrne will feel the burn from that damage, because having any sort of front wing damage, certainly in the Formula 3 cars and definitely in the Formula 3.5 cars, and just any sort of front wing damage, you'll feel like you're dragging a parachute at a track like this, where a lot of teams in real life bring in low downforce packages just to try and maximize the Kemmel straightaway, and certainly the straight line blast towards the end of the flat out blast towards the end of the lap. A lot of these drivers really depend on having great straight line speed, and certainly these two drivers that picked up the damage that they did, it's going to be like they're dragging a parachute, for lack of a better term. So that certainly is going to affect Byrne, but it's definitely affecting Amal the most. He might be at risk of losing the position here to Bug Dacey, who's currently running in the 7th position. He's right ahead of Lawrence. This might be a 3-car battle here in the not too distant future, so I think Amal is going to be a sitting duck here to Bug Dacey. Bug Dacey is going to look for the move down the inside and manages to get the move done. You can just see how bad Amal's car is on the straight line after that small little contact. So just tough break for him. He was putting together a fantastic race. He was running in 7th, then moved back up to 5th and had that incident with Byrne last lap, and now he has dropped back down to 7th, and Byrne is going to be losing positions here soon, I believe, because right now Bug Dacey has closed that gap to Byrne. So by the end of this Kemmel straightaway, it'll be, I think we're going to have two fights here. I think we're going to have Byrne fighting for his life, trying to defend from Bug Dacey, but we're also going to see a battle here from Amal and Lawrence. These two drivers are certainly going to be very close. They might go side by side going through the Kemmel straightaway. So we're going to see, we see Bug Dacey pulling out to pull the move done on Lawrence, and you can see Lawrence even dropped behind him well before the straightaway was done. So it just shows you how just a faint amount of damage on these cars, and it shows you how badly the straight line speed has affected them. So very tough break for those drivers. It's going to be a very tough second half of this race for them, and we see Byrne going off as well. I believe he might have made contact with the barrier. Actually, no, he keeps it going, but it looks like he's going to lose yet another position, so he is dropping back like a rock here. Now Lawrence has gone past Byrne, so these drivers, Byrne and Amal, are soon going to be at risk of falling out of the top 10 here. You see Kingsep, who's currently running in 9th, is right now very close to the back of Amal. He might try and look for a move here, and he is looking for the move around the outside on Amal, and I think in the not-too-distant future, he's also going to look for a move on Byrne, but he locks up there and manages to go wide, but it looked like he was going to hold on to that top 10, and he does, even though he loses a position to Amal that he just gained, and B, who goes into the 9th position, but I'm sure Kingsep is going to try and look for some retribution after that mistake, and he does. He is going to be very close to the back of B's car. This is going to be some nice battling here as they go side by side, nearly side by side. Those drivers are extremely close to each other. That's some fantastic stuff there. So we've got a big pack forming here. We've got some more battling up ahead between Amal and Byrne. Those drivers, of course, that battle came to blows right as we rejoined it, as they were going through the bus stop chicane and about to re-enter the start-finish straightaway. So those drivers came to blow a couple laps ago. Right now they're running in 7th and 8th when they were running 5th and 6th. So those drivers are going to be at risk here. They're certainly going to be at risk on this straightaway. If they're just going way too slow, I believe they might have a good enough gap. I say that Byrne and Amal are basically sitting ducks in a straight line, so we might see a 4-car battle here when they go into the Lacombe chicane going down the Kemmel straightaway. Amal looks for the move on Byrne. Byrne's car is just extremely slow with that front wing damage he picked up, and oh boy, it looked like they're nearly going to go 4 wide there as Kingsep looked for the move down the inside, but manages to back out of it. And look at that, that was a fantastic move there from B, who managed to snip off both Amal and Byrne in the series of 1 corner. That was some fantastic stuff from that driver there. That was just a beautiful overtake, textbook for lack of a better term. And right now, that was some hair-raising stuff. I'm sure it was definitely not very easy from the driver's perspective if you're Lucas Garcia B, but he still manages to pull off the overtake and is currently running in the 7th position, so he will look to try and pull away and try and gain some more positions. I don't think he'll be able to get involved in the battle between the 5th and 6th place runners, but that'll still be a storyline to follow as we're 10 laps into an 18-lap race here. Seeing some more dicing here. Amal dropping back. He's now going to be under threat here. Dropping out of the top 10, he might. This is, I don't know why I was talking like Yoda there, but ooh, that was some interesting interpretation of track limits there from the driver that was running behind them. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is Shindoi who's running behind him. So we've got a massive pack of cars here, and Byrne is really, Byrne is leading them, and then Shindoi, Shindoi's involved in it. Ooh, that was a big lock up there from Amal. He's going to have to spin that car around, so he is definitely out of this battle now. They're going 3 wide coming out of the bus stop chicane. You see the driver there, I'm not sure who that is, just missing an engine cover. That might be a glitch on my screen, but very interesting interpretation of aerodynamic regulations and track limits as we see drivers going off left, right, and center. Certainly tough there for Amal, who it looked like he just outbraked himself. He just had a very bad lock up there as he went into the bus stop chicane, and that's going to cost him dearly. James Byrne, the damage he picked up with Amal, battling with Amal a couple laps ago through the bus stop chicane, that's certainly costing him as he loses another position to Kingstep. And now we're seeing a battle here with John Owens there in the number 11 car. Sorry, he is running in 11th, the number 18 car. My apologies there. He looked for a move there on the car ahead of him, trying to get into the top 10. And there's John Owens. Oh, sorry, that's Victor Musadello. They're having a big slide there. That's a driver with the other missing engine cover there. We're seeing some very interesting interpretation of aerodynamic rules there. So tough break for him. He has a big slide, and that's going to take him out of this battle. That was some very tense stuff there. It looked like it was going to be a 7 or even an 8-car battle, but as a few drivers made a mistake and crashed, it's now fizzled out a little bit, but certainly a very good race there. This man is putting together a very good race here. Alfredo Mallow has led pretty much from start to finish. He hasn't put a foot wrong. It was very good to follow him a couple laps ago when we did, just seeing him throw that Formula 3.5 car around the track. Certainly a very good drive from him. He is leading by a wide margin over Samborski, who is running in the 2nd position. American representation there. He has put together a very clean drive. The car number 1 is currently running number 2 behind the car that is number 2, currently running in number 1, and behind them is the number 3 car running in 3rd. Anyone that has OCD in the audience might be a bit upset about the 1-2 runners, but certainly Phil Reed currently running in the 3rd position. His position matches his number. He's put together a good drive. He might start battling with the 2nd place runner there. We might see a battle here between Stamborski and Phil Reed. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye on this. This is definitely a battle we've kept our eyes on. It's really just the demise there of Byrne, who picked up that damage with the battle a couple laps ago in the incident coming out of the bus stop chicane. So he has dropped back the running order, and it looked like he may fall back even more positions. Any sort of aerodynamic damage these drivers pick up is costing them dearly, as now it looks like Shindoi is going to try and get a move done on Byrne, who you can see that front wing is curled like an overcooked French fry there. So he is going to give up that position because I think he realizes there's no real point in fighting it. So we've seen drivers with aerodynamic damage have some issues, and certainly James Byrne, who picked up that damage there with the other. I like the analogy I gave there of the front wing being bent like a overcooked French fry. He's running in 12th. He was running in that battle for the 5th and 6th place drivers, and now he's dropped out of the top 10 altogether. So I don't think he'll drop back anymore because the driver behind him, we saw a couple moments ago, had an entire engine cover just gone. So Musadola, who I'm not sure how he picked up that damage. I'm not even sure how he could pick up that kind of damage to just completely lose an engine cover. It might be a glitch on my screen. I could be wrong. But if he has picked up that damage, and it's not just a glitch on my perspective, he's definitely going to be tough. I think, you can actually see some bendage in the rear wing. So I got to imagine that Musadola was involved in that lap 1 schism that we saw in turn 1 So that must have been how he picked up the damage. He's running in 13th now, so we'll have to see if he can gain any more time on James Byrne, even with that missing engine cover. So definitely aerodynamic damage is playing a big role in this race, as we saw a lot of argy-bargy racing and drivers getting pushed off and pushed into each other. So we've seen some bit of chaos throughout this race, but we've also seen some very clean racing. This man, Lucas Garcia B, has put together a very clean race. He's currently running in the 7th position. He did that fantastic move at this section of the track as they went down the Camel straightaway. It was very reminiscent of, I believe it was Mika Hakkinen, Michael Schumacher, and Ricardo Zonta, who went 3 wide going into Lake Holm many, many years ago. I believe that was in like 2000. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone in the chat that knows history of Formula 1 more than I do, but that was an iconic moment, and Lucas Garcia B had a very similar moment to that as he went through, I think he overtook 3 or 4 cars in the span of a couple corners, so that was a fantastic move there that puts him in the 7th position. So very good race for him. If he can just hold on, I mean, we still have a lot to play for here. We're 27 minutes into this race, 13 laps, and we've still got about 5 to go. Really, it's more 4.5, but still at a track like this, which is at about 4 miles long, 4.5 laps is still a big amount of time to make some kind of mistake, and we've seen throughout this race how just a tiny little mistake can cost you dearly, as it did for Byrne and Amal, who have now dropped back the running order. I'll bring up my live timing screen here. They were running in the 5th and 6th position. Right now they find themselves running in 12th and 14th. So those drivers have just cratered through the field. They have fallen like a Led Zeppelin. So very tough race for those drivers. I'm sure they have to be very disappointed in how their race is going. You can see the side pod damage that Molo's picked up, and it doesn't look too bad. But any sort of aerodynamic damage in these in any sort of Formula car, any race car altogether, just any sort of aerodynamic damage can cost you dearly, and he loses yet another position. This time he gets overtaken by I believe that's Jamie Byrne. So we had James Byrne and Amal battling, and now we have Jamie Byrne and Amal battling, but it wasn't really much of a battle. Amal, I think he realizes he has to pick his fights, and really with a clean car that Jamie Byrne had versus the just beat up car that Amal had, I think he realized that fight was really a losing proposition, so I think he decided to bail out of it. So tough race for those drivers. They got involved in that incident, which really started from, I believe it was Amal, who just got on the power a bit too heavy and then slid into the path of James Byrne, and that's how Byrne picked up the front wing damage and how Amal picked up the side pod damage in probably one of the most cliche and probably most cringeworthy transitions in broadcasting history. If you want to know how to drive on iRacing with very little mistakes, as we're seeing a lot of drivers making mistakes there. There's 2 drivers having 2 separate incidents there. I was about to shout out the Virtual Racing School is a proud sponsor of these broadcasts, but I was rudely interrupted there by drivers having a big mistake. They're going through No Name Corner. So we're going to get a replay here. Exposito there, who we were following, had a very quiet race going for him, and he just goes through here and just drops it on the exit. He was scared there by the driver that went off. I believe that was Kinsip, who had that mistake there, hit the wall going through No Name Corner, and unfortunately for him, he just dropped it exiting, kind of scared of the Kingsip car just buried into the tire barrier. So very tough break for those drivers as they fall down the running order. Kingsip just got a bit too loose there, and that is definitely pretty much race-ending damage for the both of them. Certainly a race-ending mistake for all of them. So if you don't want to make a mistake like that, you should check out Virtual Racing School, where you can have one-on-one and group tutoring in the iRacing service with some very talented racers. So if you'd like to check that out, all of the relevant links are in the description. So as I was about to talk about Virtual Racing School, drivers made a mistake, so it might be a bit cruel to shout Virtual Racing School out, but they are a proud partner here on Apex Racing TV, so we have to give thanks to them, because if it wasn't for our proud partners that we have here on Apex Racing TV, the Formula 3.5 community for putting together these absolutely fantastic races, and the community here on Apex Racing TV for watching these broadcasts, we wouldn't be able to put on the shows that we do. So we have some fantastic stuff all across Apex Racing TV, certainly some fantastic stuff tonight, and fantastic stuff coming up in the next few days. We have the iRacing Israel League, which is always a fantastic show, certainly much different than these Formula 3.5 cars, racing in Toyota GR86s and Mazda MX-5 Cup cars. So those races are always fantastic. I believe we're running at Monza next week. Well, I say next week, this upcoming Monday, so that'll be some very exciting racing there. And if you'd like to watch some more exciting racing, I might be a bit of a shill here, but the Radical Racing Challenge, who I've had the privilege of covering throughout all of this past season, is going to be racing this next weekend at Sebring, under the lights at Sebring, so we'll have a very intrigued drivers entering that race throughout the week, so that'll be one to watch. Certainly one of the most look forward to races when I saw this season's schedule for the Radical Racing Challenge, so that'll be one to watch on Friday. And if you'd like to watch some league racing here on Apex Racing TV, besides the iRacing Israel League, of course, you can check out the Apex Racing League GT3 trophy on Tuesdays. We'll be racing at Road America on Tuesday, so that'll be some very fantastic stuff. You can just check out all of the stuff that we have for offer here on Apex Racing TV, whether it be the Formula 3.5 series, the iRacing Israel League, the Radical Racing Challenge, the ARL GT3 trophy, or any other series here on Apex Racing TV. Feel free to check it out. If you want to be notified of that, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you get notified of any time we post here and any time we have a live stream. So, getting back to the racing action here, some drivers have spread throughout the field. Lucas Garcia has managed to gain another position here on Lawrence. He put together a very clean move. He's putting together a very clean race and a very solid race by his standards. I believe he started farther back in the field. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to take a look at the replay here of the pass that they had going through the Eau Rouge and Radion section there. Very textbook move from the looks of it, as Garcia B just gets the slipstream there off the back of Lawrence's car and manages to put together a very textbook overtake and manages to get past Lawrence before they hit the brakes going into the Lacombe chicane. Very good move from him and a very good race by his standards. He has put together a very solid drive all of tonight. I believe he is the highest gained driver throughout this race. Actually, no, he's gained 9 positions, which certainly is not anything to scoff at. He's put together a fantastic drive. But John Owens, who is currently running in the 8th position, he has gained the most amount of positions anyone. He's up 10 so far, so a very good race from a lot of these drivers up and down the field, and certainly some forgettable races from some of these drivers as well that are involved in some mistakes. This driver was involved in an incident here. Gerbeau, who was involved in that lap 1 schism there, is now catching up to Amal, who was involved in that halfway mark schism there. He was involved in an incident with Byrne, who has now dropped back even farther throughout the field. So those drivers who were running and battling for the last top 5 spot and firmly in the top 10 are now dropping through the running order, and he might lose another position here, Amal, and it looks like he will, as Gerbeau pulls out to try and get the move done, going side by side as they enter Blanchimont. So it looks like he is going to get the move done there for 14th, and we're seeing some more racing here. This is Byrne involved here with Musadola. Both of these drivers, I believe, have aerodynamic damage. I might be mistaken. No, I am not. I'm not mistaken. Jamie Baker and James Baker. I don't know if they're spouses or twins. I'm not sure. I might have to ask them. Maybe we could get an interview with them and ask them after this race is over. But certainly these two wounded, definitely very wounded iRacing Formula 3.5 cars are just trying to wind down the laps right now. We have 2 laps to go here. These drivers are still trying to battle, even though they're outside of the top 10. They're battling for the 12th position here. And Musadola, who even with a completely missing engine cover, manages to get the move done on Byrne, but it's not over yet, as Byrne is going to look to try and outbrake him and go for the move around the outside as they enter the Lacombe chicane. Certainly just not close enough there for Byrne to get that position back. So it looks like Musadola is going to take 12th, but this battle is certainly not over yet, as we have a lot to play for here. We're about halfway through the penultimate lap here, so certainly a lot to play for, even though we have such a little amount of time left in this race. But certainly someone who's put on a fantastic drive really from start to finish is Mallow, who is going to take the white flag this time by. We were following him earlier, and he was having a very good drive. It's poetry in motion, for lack of a better word. It's always great to see a driver just push their car to the limit, certainly not make any mistakes, and just be able to, like, dance their car around a circuit like this at a track like Spa, where it's definitely a driver's track. Certainly a driver's favorite, but certainly a very challenging one for the drivers. Just seeing a driver as good as Mallow just dance that car around the circuit for 18 laps here and manage to pull nearly a 10-second gap. If he pushes really hard, he might be able to pull another 2/10 and manage to pull that extra 2/10 to get a double-digit gap here. We'll just have to wait and see, but certainly don't want to put a lot of pressure on him. Certainly don't want to jinx him, as I've done occasionally here on Apex Racing TV. But Mallow has put together a very good drive. He grabbed the pole position here tonight, had a fantastic start, and pulled away of this man, Edward Sambrowski, who had a pretty even keel start compared to Reed, who's currently running in third, but was just not close enough to Mallow all throughout this race. Currently 9 seconds back, nearly 10 seconds back at this point as they go through the middle section of this circuit. So it looks like the top 3 positions, unless something major happens for any of these drivers, it looks like those drivers are going to finish where they are right now. Mallow will probably take a very commanding win right now. He's pulled the gap up to 10 seconds, or as I say that, drops back, and that picks up again to 10 seconds. So about a 10-second gap there with Mallow and Samborski, and then Reed right now is about 4 seconds back of Samborski in second, completing your podium. Pretty much a majority of the field is spread out, but we do have a bit of a battle here forming on our hands. We're going to get a replay here of Kingsep, who had it looked like he was going to put together a very good race, and just things fell apart in this, really the final third of this race. We're going to get a replay here as he goes into the pit lane here, and goes into the pits. I'm not sure why he would do that. Maybe underfueled his car. We'll just have to wait and see, but he put together a very unfortunate drive, but Mallow put together a very great drive. He wins, and your final podium positions run out. But this is a battle we got to look for here. This is the closest battle on the circuit right now. Gerbeau battling with Byrne, the second Byrne he's had to battle in the past couple of laps, and he manages to get that position. I believe he's currently, actually, no, forgive me, he was not battling with Jamie Byrne, who's currently running 11th. He was still involved in that battle with James Byrne, who's running in 13th. So those drivers, looks like they're going to finish line astern. James Byrne, you gotta feel bad for him. He was involved in that incident with Amal through the bus stop chicane a couple laps ago, and ever since then he cratered down from 6th position, and it looks like he's going to finish in 13th. So very tough race for him and Amal. They're going to finish 13th and 16th from what looked like a pretty guaranteed top 10 from them. So, as my voice gives out there, remember, kids, always good to drink some water, especially when you're doing a iRacing broadcast all on your own. This man has put together an interesting drive. I believe he dropped back a few positions, of course, with that engine cover completely missing, and the rear wing damage. You can see the lip kind of sticking out there of the top of the rear wing, kind of like dragging a parachute down the straightaway. So for the aerodynamic damage that he picks up, he finishes in the 14th position. So a lot of drivers, just a few drivers crossing the finish line now. I believe this is your last driver on track at the moment. I believe everyone else is in the pits. Holt, who put together a very quiet drive, he is going to finish in the 17th position. Well back of Amal, who finishes 1 minute and 27 seconds back of your race winner, Mallow. A very dramatic race there for the iRacing 3.5 Formula Series here on Apex Racing TV. Few incidents throughout this race. We saw some multi-car accidents and some very dramatic moments throughout this race, but those drivers kept it clean for the most part and put on a very good drive there. So fantastic stuff there. Certainly Mallow, who picks up the win tonight, had a very good drive. Just being able to dance that car around the track like he did. He definitely deserved a win tonight, which he got by over 10 seconds. So very dominant drive from him. And even though there wasn't a battle towards the front of the field, we still had a lot of action throughout this field. So Alfredo R. Mallow takes a win tonight, 10.1 seconds over Edward Samborski, who finishes in second, and Phil Reed, who rounds out your podium in the 3rd position. Then looking through the rest of the field, we have Yuki Shirakawa, who finishes in 4th. We have Errol Bugdaci, who finishes in 5th. Lucas Garcia B, who put together a very good drive, ends up in the 6th position. He was one of the highest gain drivers throughout all of this race. He ends up in 6th, and Jay Lawrence in 7th. John Owens, who I believe is the driver that gained the most amount of positions throughout this race, at 10. He finishes in P8 tonight. Certainly a very good drive from him, and very under-the-radar drive, for lack of a better term. Takashi Shindoi finishes in the 9th position. Then we have Jorge Lopez in 10th. Jamie Byrne in 11th, who started behind his doppelganger with the same name. I'm not sure if they're brothers, sisters, or what. Started behind James Byrne and manages to finish ahead after James picked up that damage. So Jamie Byrne finishes in 11th, and we have Victor Musadella, who picked up that the rear end damage. He finishes in 12th, and it's Tim Bryan in 13th, Amal in 14th, involved in that battle with James Byrne. Those drivers, quite fittingly, finished line astern in 14th and 15th. What looked like a surefire 5th and 6th for them, it turns into utter heartbreak. So they end up in 14th and 15th. Then you have Gerbeau, who we saw involved in an incident there. Certainly a tough break for him. He ends up in 16th. Then we have Richard Holt in 17th, who's the last of the drivers to take the checkered flag. Then we have King Sepp, who we saw have a crash a few laps ago. Probably when he followed into the pits there was just to kind of call it quits after the damage he picked up. Certainly these cars are a bit fragile when you have pretty much side contact like that can bend a toe link or something like that. So he ends up in 18th. And then looking through the rest of the field of drivers that fell out early in this race, we have Daniel Gallus, who ends up in 19th, 14 laps down. And then we have Simon Fessy and Valio Tavares, who are both involved in that lap 1 turn 1 incident. They end up in 20th and 21st respectively. It's a good thing I brought up a new bottle of water before I did this broadcast, because I definitely needed that. That was some great racing that we saw tonight. Very action-packed from start to finish, and that was fun to watch. There's certain like a lot of people tend to use certain adjectives and stuff like that. That's like way too big to describe a race, but that there was just good old-fashioned racing. And these cars, which are fairly old-fashioned to drive, it definitely takes a lot of skill, and a lot of the drivers that were throughout this field had a lot of skill. And we actually have some interviews here from some of these drivers, and I think the first driver that I will pull in is your 2nd place finisher, I believe, Edward Saborski. So we'll bring him in to the commentary booth. Ed, we saw a very good drive from you, certainly very clean. Couldn't really match the pace there of Mallow. How's the race from your end?
You know, I don't want to make this sound like I'm being mean, but Jorge had a spin in turn 1. I was watching the replay before I joined the interview. So once he spun, he's P2 in the championship, and I realized by the end of the first time through Lacombe, I had nothing for Mallow. So I was just looking back to whoever was in 3rd and trying to mind the gap. Unreal pace. I'm not particularly great at Spa. Whatever my issue is with it, I don't know. But I mean, that's what you should do out front. So congrats to I think it's Alfred, right?
Yeah, it was Alfred. Actually, it's Alfredo.
Alfredo,
Mallow.
yes.
It's my favorite sauce. Well, my 2nd favorite sauce to put on pasta, and our 1st place runner tonight. So we saw a fairly quiet race from your end. Certainly, you got a good view of the lap 1 shindig that went down at Lasaurus at the start of the race. You got a chance to look through the replay of that, and that was just absolute carnage. We were talking earlier in the race about how we might see higher attrition in this race than we've seen throughout most of the season. Was that the case tonight?
Absolutely. So for those who don't know, we spend the majority of the time on a higher downforce package. So you become really used to that downforce package. And then you come here, you qualify on it. Most people do. And then you just jump into a medium downforce. So it's kind of, imagine you're driving down the highway, you got 100 horsepower, now you got 50, but you got to do the same speed. And you have no practice, it's just instant. Like, get out there, make it happen, because that's exactly what we go through. So, from my point of view, it's to be expected. It's unfortunate. I wish people were more patient, but this is auto racing, so there's some give and take, and I guess you just hope you're not part of it.
Certainly a lot of drivers racing hard tonight with that low downforce package, and we saw a lot of drivers attempting a lot of moves throughout this track. We saw obviously a lot of passes going into La Source, a lot going into the Lacombe chicane at the end of the Camel straightaway, and even going into the bus stop. So I know you didn't get too much of an opportunity to do some overtaking as you slid into second and stayed there throughout most of this race, but talk me through, from a driver's perspective, if you did have to do some overtaking tonight, where would you prefer to pull off that overtake?
Myself personally, with the setup direction I've taken, I would prefer through Lacombe, because then I have the following sequence of corners to pull a gap, and if I can get to about 6/10 of a second, I'm unpassable for the rest of the lap as long as I make it back with that gap. That's my approach. Everyone else has different viewpoints. I wouldn't say mine was the best today, as we saw. I mean, I lost well over 10 seconds, so maybe taking some wing out of it was better today to have the straightaway pace with the colder temps. I don't know, but I know what works for me, so I just drive it to the best of my ability.
Even though you do like to downplay your performance because of the gap there to Mallow, you still put together a very clean drive, and with the race that we saw, that was a bit hectic compared to some of the other races we've seen this season. Certainly a very well-composed drive. Thank you very much for joining us. That was a very good insight that you gave at the end of this broadcast. Anyone you'd like to give thanks to or shout out?
Absolutely. Everyone who's taken the time to show up, Apex for broadcasting, everyone on the forum voicing their opinion. The series is in a good place right now. As always, you have frustrations and annoyances, but in a very general sense, the series is doing great. So I'd like to thank everyone for participating.
As a race car driver myself, I can certainly relate to always complaining when things don't go my way. So Eddie, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for that interview, my friend. It was greatly appreciated. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you. We had a great time. Take care.
That was an absolute great time. Fantastic racing from start to finish. Certainly a bit chaotic at stages, but still a very good time that I had broadcasting that race. So, thank you, Eddie, for that interview. That was certainly a good insight that we got in the drivers. We have Phil Reed, who we will bring into the comm box now. Just unmuted himself, so we'll have to ask him. He ends up in third, so I believe he had a very good race from his end, managed to gain one position. Phil Reed, thank you very much for joining us, my friend. How's the race?
Yeah, it went surprisingly well, I think. Like you say, got a nice place off the start. Actually, I think I jumped I jumped one off the start, but I think because Yuki had got ahead, I count it as I overtook two people at the start. And then, from there, tried to stick with Ed as long as I could. Got the gap to Yuki. And then obviously fell off with Ed at the end, but yeah, it went all right.
I will say one thing that I've noted about the fairly big gaps that we see for some of the drivers that are just they're either really close or just spread out by multiple seconds. So you think the dirty air coming off these cars played any effect in that?
I do wonder whether running the medium downforce affects it a little bit more. In terms of you're already a little bit lower grip anyway, so I guess it possibly affects it a bit. But I do think that the slipstream, typically you gain a bit more than you would lose from any sort of dirty air. Although I guess you're already close to the top end even without the slipstream, so I guess perhaps you don't gain as much as normal. But it's hard to say. But I think in general a lot of the times it's just, this track is generally so easy to get past another car that you find that once you're ahead, it's actually surprisingly easy to stay ahead because you just have that inherent pace on people. So I think that's probably why the gaps open up.
Certainly a track like this with a lot of heavy braking zones, there's definitely a lot of overtaking opportunities. I asked Ed this question, I'll ask you as well. You didn't do a lot of overtaking today, but if you did have to try and pull off a lot of overtaking in this race, where would you want to do those moves? Would you want to do them in the bus stop, or would you want to do them in Lacombe? What section of the track would you prefer?
Oh, Lacombe, because you do it into bus stop, then all you really open yourself up is for them to just get you back down the straight. So it's kind of a wasted move. The only way you can really make it work in the bus stop is if you really throw them off, but then it kind of feels like it's a bit dirty if you're doing it like that. So yeah, down into Lacombe, get through there and then try to pull away as much as you can through the twisty bits.
Certainly saw a bit of chaos towards the back of the field, definitely at the other bus stop where two of the drivers that were running towards the top 5 ended up making a mistake, damaging their cars and dropping out of the top 10. So I can definitely agree with your point about doing a move in the bus stop chicane. Phil, thank you very much for joining us. Very good insight there as well. Anyone that you'd like to give thanks to or shout out?
I'd like to give the same shout out to everyone. Thanks to all the guys for watching, thanks for you guys putting on the broadcast, and thanks for Ed for doing all he does with the 3.5 community, keeping it together, getting people involved, and obviously trying to put this broadcast together.
I can definitely agree with the point you made about the community. Certainly without the community, these races and these broadcasts won't be able to happen. So Phil, thank you very much for joining us. Fantastic race, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.
There was your second place runner there, Phil Reed. He had a pretty good race there from start to finish. He ends up in the 3rd position, and we also got a chance to interview Ed, who finishes in the 2nd position. So those drivers put together some very good racing, and certainly some good racing all throughout this field. A lot of drivers putting on some very good results. Had drivers gaining upwards of 10 positions there with John Owens, who put on a fantastic drive there, finishes in 8th, and gained 10 positions there from start to finish. So certainly a very good drive from him. And at a track where, me personally, I was expecting a bit more carnage. We didn't see too much of that today. Certainly saw a bit of chaos throughout this field, but overall some very solid racing there tonight, and I hope you enjoyed watching it at home. So for myself, Ron Mons, Joshua Wilkie in the production booth, and the empty seat next to me that's currently being occupied by a tumbleweed, I say thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you wherever it is in the near future. Have a great rest of your day.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.